Assalamu alaikum, you're listening to Unity FM on 93.5. We're back and we're talking to Ray Douglas from Gangology. We're talking to Craig Pinkney, PhD researcher from University College Birmingham, Tanayah Sam, gang specialist, youth worker and former gang member himself, and Adil Keyani, who I'd like to bring in now. Adil, is Islam the problem? Are we giving children enough Islam? Are the imams doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are the masjids doing what they're supposed to be doing? What is the problem?
No, look, I mean, people are arguing Islam's a solution, right? It's not the problem, right? But this is it, and I thank Tanayah for his point and what he said, especially his journey about finding Islam. That's what got him out. And many people, by the way, who are on this path of, violence or, criminal background, gangsters, for example, they find faith in Islam for many, and that's how they come, to the right path, if you like, in terms of their lives, their careers, and their families. But then, to play the devil's advocate, the other side of the coin and the argument is we have so much Islam. For example, in Birmingham, right, we have so many masajid, the mosque, we have so many imams, we have so many alim courses, and the names can go on and on and on. So Islam is there, but clearly the quote-unquote Islam has done very little to guide these young guys and these young men in the streets that are killing people, stabbing others. In the month of Ramadan, I read about someone got stabbed in front of his mother, right, as well. Where was the Islam there, right? So the point is there a disconnect? Is Islam not reaching them? Or is it like you mentioned yourself, Nasser, a lot of these, they're graduates from being kids of this madrasa rote system. Where is the disconnect? That's the question.
Can I interject and say, I would say the Islam isn't the issue, it's the individuals, the Muslims who have brought into this Western society, the culture, right? And gang culture has become popular youth culture, and they have brought into that, and have exchanged Islam for that. We look at in prisons, myself, Craig, Ray, we've worked in many prisons between us, right, for over a number of years. There is no other intervention or method that has brought a truce with active gang members in prisons than Islam. And I will go on record and say that. That's the only thing that I've said. Individuals who want to kill me, and then they see me in prison, and the fact that I'm a practicing Muslim, they hug me, and they want to learn about Islam. And we look from the time of the Messenger of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the war in factions that was going on amongst the Arabs, and how Islam brought them together, right? So I would say that Islam in and of itself has got the methods, but the culture that the young people have brought in today I know they're Muslim, but they're all listening on their headphones to hip hop, right? They're all dressing the same way as Mr. Man who's standing on the corner shouting. The guys, they all want the Rolex, the designer clothes, and the bad boy attitude, and the girls want that, even from the Muslim community. Have you seen them? Have you been into those shisha lounges? Okay, so what they've did is they've exchanged Islam for that culture and that way of life, and they're mixing it with a bit of inshallah, with a bit of alhamdulillah, which we hear even on the rap songs, even down to Nicki Minaj is putting inshallah and mashallah in her rap songs. So they're mixing and blending, but Islam itself has got it. But I think the education and the way it's being taught, right, I think that we have to, we're not in the we're not 1500 years ago. Technology plays a big role today, and the interaction and the engagement of young people is poor. You're telling a young person just go sit down and go read the Quran. No, that's not the way.
Can I comment on that point?
Yes,
and I'm
please,
glad you
ahead.
mentioned that. Thanks. And what I took away from what you just said is two things. Yeah. There's an issue of accessibility, the accessibility of this orthodox or right, true Islam, right, which will help these youth. And secondly, Islam ain't cool enough. Let's be real. Islam isn't cool enough. I'd rather listen to hip hop and speak about watches and know I've got that fame and that culture,
And the trainers.
because Islam is a boring thing for old people. Do you know what I mean? So, like
But
you
it
said,
was cool enough.
but what you just said about 1500 years ago, you're now trying to contextualize it, saying now here we are now. How can we make it relevant again? How can you make the Islam relevant again for the youth?
If I can bring Ray Douglas in on that.
So, the concept of civic participation, right? So if you look over the last 3 to 5 years, 3 years to 5 years, the increase in food banks. Every masjid's got one in the car park. Muslims are saying, look, we're not radical. We feed the poor, right? Because they realised that the camera was on us as a community, and we were seeing that we had to show that we were doing things when historically the Muslims are givers. Do you know what's interesting about that? This month in the Ramadan, 25 million plus will leave this country to go and support countries abroad and poverty abroad, and that's commendable and that's amazing. But part of zakat is the hearts and minds. Part of the fiqh of zakat you can give to hearts and minds. So I'm going to ask how many Muslim organisations are out there that are zakat eligible, that are working beyond the food bank, because there's poverty of the mind, but there's also poverty of the pocket, but poverty of the mind. And what's the opposite of poverty? Gluttony. So this concept of these AP watches and the fast German whips and all that lifestyle, that shisha, fast lifestyle, all of that you know, that lifestyle that they're adopting, what will it lead to? Well, here's something interesting, because a lot of the culture we know comes from America, mixed with a bit of Jamaican heritage, mixed with a bit of British, and this kind of intersectionality of youth culture. Who the dominant gang in America, in the West Coast? The Latinos, right? Now let's break that down. At their core is faith, Catholicism, economic migrant families, so big numbers, tribes, right? Same thing, right? So they in the middle of all that gang culture, they'll be like, praise be to God, but I'm going to have to, you know, whatever. So we see a similarity. Islam is the sat-nav, but some people choose to take the first left instead of the third left, what the sat-nav says. We know long term it's the solution. It's proven century upon century, but there's something about us as Muslims being visible. So in between our corporate world and our masjid, where are we, and the economic side, where are we visible? Where are our civic society organisations? Because you can't depend on a statutory youth service. It's decimated across the country, never mind the city. So who's picking up these young people? And I say this time and time again, some of these masjids are beautiful, amazing chandeliers, expensive carpets, but they're empty outside of the salah, and they've got big halls, and even these churches. So the faith community, for me, have to wake up. Because I said this out recently, you have to wake up, because my understanding is that the prophetic tradition is that the prophets walked amongst the people. Weren't just behind this mimbar or behind this pulpit, right? And also, let's be fair, the imams and the caliphs, they don't have the capacity to deal with this. And it's not. I say it's not even their job. It's enough to keep this to establish the salah, marry people, bury people, mediate. You know, that's enough on a minimum wage, if you will. I'm saying within our congregations is where the answer is, because in our congregations, what we do as Muslims, when we get to the masjid door, we kick off our shoes and we stop being the academic, we stop being the gangs worker, we stop being the businessman, we stop being the teacher, and then we soak in the scripture, and then we put those shoes back on, and then we become that again. Whereas what we should be doing, we should be integrated within our faith communities.
Craig, you wanted to come in there on that point?
I think Ray was spot on, and I think that we do need to wake up, and I think that congregations, for me, play a immense part in terms of engaging with this particular issue and being solution based. And I like that idea about when we enter into the masjid and we throw our shoes away and we kind of leave the research and PhD at the door. And it's interesting because even at the masajid where we pray, you know, many of us are in there talking to young people, and it's interesting the type of young people that come to speak to us. Young people that recognize that, you know what, we can talk to you, uncle. We can talk to you because why? We're non-judgmental. We're individuals that realize and recognize that, you know what, each and every one of us make mistakes. And what I'm not going to do is throw something down your throat or point the finger at you without recognizing and understanding the reality. And this is what young people are saying in the masjid. They're saying, you know what, I'm trapped. I want a girlfriend, want a woman. Parents are saying, you know what, I have to wait until I'm 20 years old before I can get married. You know what, I've made a mistake. These are the things that they talk about to me as young people. But guess what? It's the same issues that young people outside of the Muslim community talk about. So as a youth worker and as a member of the community, you recognize that young people are the same regardless of whatever label they come with. So for me, it's about, yes, the community waking up and being realistic and talking about the things that essentially are going to help and nurture our young people. You know, even during Taraweeh, I always walk along the road and I see all of the young people in the community. They're outside smoking, chilling. It's like, oh my God, Muslims are coming, everyone hide the cigarettes type of thing. And for me, it's that, you know, as Ray said, we have these massive halls and we have 25 million that's coming out of the country. But imagine if 25 million that was spent here in this country engaging all of the issues that we've been speaking about today on this particular show. Imagine the changes that we would make. And in terms of the congregation, so we're not relying on one man that's standing on the member. Imagine if 25 million that was spent on individuals with the knowledge, skills and expertise within the congregation can benefit their own community. And these are the things that we essentially need to start paying attention to.
I'd just like to say that 25 million was a conservative figure. I do know that 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago, the Muslim community was raising at least 100 million to send outside the country. So there is a need to take a small percentage of that to actually help and invest. Ray, you wanted to come in there?
So it's a perfect segue then, really, because then what I'll say is we have to, because we spoke about the imams and the chaplains and so on, and we've spoken about the families and the youth service. So we have to have a conversation about the NGOs, because the NGOs that are carrying these resources and doing some great work abroad, how many of them are actively developing and delivering programs here to work within our communities? And you know, I see the sprinklings and really great work around DV and it's made and some of the stuff around homelessness and some really good work. But guess what? There's got to be some work around reducing criminality and reducing violence and you know, that the train that never fails to arrive, also addressing the issues of radicalisation. So what we're talking about is what's called community-led assistance. So the thing that the host community, if you will, and I know Birmingham's more diverse now, but the host Muslim community are South Asian Pakistanis, right? It's the host community, essentially. The concept of social capital, they taught us, you know, the baradari, the qabila, that there was what built that community, right? Now that's getting a bit thinner and the foundations are a bit rocky.
It's breaking down.
But because of that social capital, the masajid were built, the halal businesses were built, the Islamic schools were built. All these things were based upon community-led action, right? They didn't wait to be told you can do it. Now we're in a different era where we need community-led assistance. So if we're really concerned about working with and making sure our streets are safer, here's what: send your zakat to those countries that you've sent or historically sent them, but put some aside for those at-risk young people, and an organisation in your local area that are commendable, reputable, transparent, have good governance. Support them. Even if support them with your knowledge, equity, yourself, never mind finance. Support local, and this is important. And you know, we don't have to talk about some of the organisations that are doing some great work and turning the camera and saying, you know what, let's start from within. But as time goes on, Brexit's coming, austerity and all these things, you're going to see more and more violence, right? We have to lead on this. So when people look at our community, say, you know what, Islam's not my faith, but I respect what that community's doing. Yeah, I respect how they're helping. I respect how they're supporting their young people. And we've got to move away from expecting the local authority to resolve our issues. It's not going to happen. So it's time that you know, Ramadan is a great time and it's a time of reflection, but I really think we've reached the tipping point now in Birmingham with these tragedies that have happened, because now we know that Ramadan is not necessarily the yardstick for us to desist from certain types of behaviour.
You mentioned Ramadan, Ray Douglas, and I'd just like to ask Tanayah Sam, who gets to visit prisons a lot and gets to meet the prison population, which is abnormally large, from the Muslim community, how do they experience Ramadan, or how do they get to spend Ramadan? Do they have visits from imams, or they get halal food, or what happens in prisons during Ramadan?
Okay, well, I've did 7 years as a prisoner myself, and I've worked in prisons for 4.5 years. Haven't been in a prison for the last 12 months, and I don't intend to go back into one, working or being a prisoner for now. Okay. But it's difficult. I think Siyam is easier as a free person than within prison, but I suppose it depends on the individual's mindset. I've been in contact with some of the brothers from prison, even one today who's serving life, and so they go, they're coping, but it's quite difficult. The food, in essence, it comes a lot earlier, so it's like in a tub, and it's supposed to stay warm. And to me, the quality of food's poor, and it's not something that I would encourage anybody to want to go into prison and experience. But I just want to make a point that in prison, I think brotherhood is stronger in jail, and and that can be like, radicalization. That's where we start to have these conversations, but in essence, the brotherhood's stronger because it's a more close-knit community. But I think education is poor in prison. So me as a prisoner, when I was in prison, because I had previously, before I went to prison whilst on the run, I had spent time in Yemen, I'd spent time in Birmingham trying to study and understand Islam. Then I go to prison with a bit of Arabic. A lot of brothers flocked to me. What that meant was, I'm now, as according to the authorities, I'm the leader of the Muslim gang, and so it made life difficult for me. But those brothers wanted to learn, and that's why they would come and speak with me, so I can teach them what I know, the little bit that I know. And it's funny because the imams, if you're looking at a large proportion of revert prisoners from white, European, Afro-Caribbean, are coming to Islam, as well as those who are born Muslim subcontinent, right? And they're used to the road life, and then now we've got a more conservative Muslim as the imam who doesn't understand that life. There's a disconnect in relationship there. Yes, they can talk about Islam, but unfortunately some of the imams can't even, their English isn't that good.
Oh my God.
Their English really isn't that good, and so naturally those guys, those prisoners, are going to go towards other prisoners who they think are more learned, and that's where we have the grey area with, where they talk about radicalization. It's not as bad as they claim, in my opinion, but it does take place. But the brotherhood on a whole, though, it's a beautiful thing in prison. It really Ramadan, is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I'm also interested in what happens to these people when they come out. And we remember the famous case of Mike Tyson when he went to prison. He actually became a Muslim, and he was very, very humble and very nice person, and then all of a sudden he came out and he changed all over again. So, I mean,
look, at the end of the day, let's not forget, you don't just take a magic pill of Islam and all of a sudden your problems are going to go away. We got people with Mike Tyson, issues going back to childhood. There's trauma, there's psychological issues, and that affects every single one of us. That's affected me growing up as well, and I'm just a human being. You're a product of your environment, experiences at the end of the day. So this idea that, this utopic kind of, panacea of taking Islam pill and everything's going to go away, that's not the case. You need a mentorship program. You need the right people around you, which is why Prophet Muhammad said, about, al-maru ala dini khalilihi. فَلْيَنْظُرْ مَنْ يُخَالِلْ, right? So the person is upon the deen of his companion, so may he look at those that he takes as a friend, And a lot of this, and these brothers could tell me more about in terms of who we do take as friends. I know of a case of a sister, and she's having issues with her son, and her son's doing really well at school, but all of a sudden just a 180 because he's hanging around with kids at school that are on the verge of getting excluded and being caught with knives. So yeah, going back to the issue of mentorship, what are the mentorship programs out there? We hear a lot about the Muslim community now. I know Ray mentioned it before to me not long ago, kind of appealing to the businessmen of the community. Invest your money into mentorship programs. But let's be real, we're not really interested in that. Let's be completely honest here. I'm in business myself as well. The way I think is the same way. We want to feed poor people abroad. Yeah? So the pockets, that the people that don't have food.
It's more tangible and more simple to understand.
Precisely, simple to, but reality is there's poverty of the mind, as Ray said. That's a big issue. That's a huge issue. So we do need a proper mentorship program. And I encourage all businessmen as well, and I love to be part of this, that we can actually have people that are experts, obviously, not just some Tom, Dick and Harry, because you mentioned tonight about accessibility and there's a disconnect. We need experts. We've had enough of fools leading us. We've had enough of fools leading our masajid who call themselves imams. I'm going to be very frank with you, who can't speak a word of English. So first of all, let's invest in the experts. Let's have confidence in them. And inshallah, let's work in a proper mentorship program.
Yeah, but and I think with all due respect to our learned people, the problem that everyone's gone to them for everything, and that's not fair on them. So I always understand that, and please anyone jump in and check me on this. I recall a hadith when the people of agriculture came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, tell us when to plant the seeds so we can have a good harvest. And he turned to them and said, I wasn't sent for that. I wasn't sent to tell you about agriculture. I was sent to deliver the Tawheed and message. So that shows you that there are certain people within a community that have certain skill set. That's that need to be engaged. But there's also what you said there, Adil. In London, the business community in September are mobilising and actually on a big scale actually are mobilising because their programme of the year is to support violence reduction.
MashaAllah.
What about the charities? Are they doing enough? As you said, they're raising hundreds of millions of pounds.
Well, but this is the question, and I think the charities know. To be fair, I think some of the charities would support the work if those things were in place. It was measurable, so you can measure the impact. But also, if it's with organisations and individuals that were trustworthy, but also and it's. But I think I do think though that the NGOs are running out of time not to support this work because people will start asking them because we know. We know the pattern. The African kid on the street poster with the flies, that's been done. But what we're going to start talking about is sustainable aid. But likewise, where you're from, outside the door, we can support what's going on abroad, and it's important. And no one's here. I don't think anyone here is saying it's not important. But if crack is being sold outside your front door, if as a sex worker, sex practitioner who works in the clinic in town said to me, a Muslim brother, he said, "Do you know how much morning after pills I give out in Ramadan at our organisation?" He said that to me. I was at this conference. These shisha lounges, communities, non-Muslim communities, campaigning because of the amount of condoms that are outside in the car park. Now, people don't want to hear that because the pakora are being fried now and we're about to sit down and make dua. But dua is amazing, but you know what's great as well? Action. Action's amazing. So it's time for us to have an honest conversation and start mobilising, and we will see the benefits of it. Then we change the dominant culture, and it can happen because we've seen it happen 1400 years ago where people were burying their daughters and people were alcoholics and people were, and we've seen people turn and change
and transform.
Craig Pinkney, you wanted to come in. We've just got less than 2 minutes. Did you want to make a last point?
No.
Well, I do,
Okay.
and I want to say that this is Tanayah Sam, and you can get me on Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter at TSA Projects UK. Likewise, Craig Pinkney on Twitter, you can get him on Real Action UK, and Raymond Douglas, you can get him on Gangology, and Adil, you can get him on at Close Shave TV. So yeah.
And just to jump, we don't want to kind of just end it here. One of the reasons why we came together, which is very rare, all of us at once, and even though we're close friends, is because we want to see some action. So I think what we're aiming to do over the next few weeks is something, maybe more community, maybe broaden it out, get some more people in a room and start building, because the issue's not going away. And I think on behalf of all of us brothers, we'd like to thank you, Nasser, for turning this around at such a short notice.
Thank you very much.
So with the recent research that we've been discussing, if they want to find the research around social media violence, gangs and social media, music and its impact on young people and violence, if they go to my website, they'll be able to download those articles for free. And my website is www.craigpinkney.com, and they'll be able to find
Pinkney
it.
is Pinkney.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Adil,
Okay,
about
yeah.
20 seconds.
So I'm arranging and organising a discussion and an episode on this. If you want to contact me, go to closeshavetv.com or Twitter at closeshavetv. It's going to be about what we're speaking about today: violence, knife crime, gun crime, and hopefully it can be some.
That's the end of the show. Want to thank you. My name is Nasser Mahmood. You've been listening to Unity FM in the heart of the city and taking you up to Iftar now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.